What's the name of your podcast?
The Undisputed Podcast with Bobby Fish.
You do by yourself, or do you get guests?
No, I got two. Yeah, we do guests, and then I got two guys from my hometown that do it with me.
Where's your hometown?
Albany, New York.
They're from Albany, huh? I was born. Is that where
That's
you're
where
born?
I'm from. Yeah,
You're from Albany. I was born in Brooklyn. Born in the north, raised in the south, and then moved out west. Yes, I got everything.
You might have seen the mini series about his life, Queen of the South. But anyway,
that's completely inaccurate.
But let me tell you, Bobby,
that's on our to watch list.
Right.
If you ever want two people that they're not afraid of talking about themselves, there's Joe and Disco for your podcast. Nothing.
Appreciate that. Let's get that sorted out.
Right. How long?
I'm an ad specialist, Bobby. If you want to talk later, we could talk about getting some ads on your show too.
Let me ask you a question.
I mean, we could use some. I need to start making some money on this damn thing. Like it's right now,
it's kind of easy because every motherfucker has a podcast. That's the problem.
Yeah,
I get it.
We're pretty fortunate on this show, but
so now, we're fortunate because we built a fan base for so many years. Yeah, but it's like wrestling, you first get in, they don't really know you, then you got to be on TV for a couple of years and be in a good storyline, and then you've got the fucking competition from the real bigwigs, Bruce Pritchard. Everybody wants to hear him because he's the closest guy next to Vince for so many years. You got guys like Chris Jericho,
Eric,
JR, you know what I'm saying? So the Eric, that he ran WCW. So you have those type of guys. And then you've got a million wrestlers and guys that aren't even wrestlers who somehow became experts in the business by watching a lot of wrestling. That's their resume.
Yes,
I watched a lot of wrestling, therefore I know more than you. Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
So therefore I know more than you. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Well,
Dave Meltzer's.
Go ahead,
Disco, please.
Well, I think this is funny. It's like when we were growing up, and like you're young, you're getting in your teen years, you grow up and you're a wrestling fan, you want to be like Roddy Piper, Hulk Hogan, Dusty Rhodes. Then like the mid '90s came around, and wrestling, then the dirt sheets started making, so the wrestling fans want to grow up and they want to be Dave Meltzer. Yeah. Now you have a generation of wrestling fans that want to grow up and be JD from New York. Like a Mark podcast or something. Bro, it's just unbelievable. Like, when you get all these, like, how the dynamic has changed, and then you look around, for example, like, you just look at for example, you see this. You've wrestled in front of WWE crowds and you wrestled in front of AEW crowds.
Yes, sir.
Mark, complete difference in the two crowds. Like, you look at the AEW crowd, and, like, physically, you look at these people, everybody looks broke. They look like your typical indie fans and stuff and everything, and just like the WWE crowd's families, kids, more colorful, merchandise and stuff, not just black and dark and everything. Yeah. And you look at that in that crowd, and I'm like, these are all people that want to be like podcasters and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's a shame, like like the type of crowd wrestling draws today. I'm like, how did that happen? When do you think this started happening? We started drawing from that nerd culture, and they've kind of taken over the business.
I think that you're hitting the nail on the head. I do feel as if like there's more of them than there are of us at this point. And like I go into locker rooms, and I feel like I'm a visitor. Like I don't feel like, these are this is necessarily my crowd or these are my people. Like when I came up, I took pride in the fact that like, I've been an athlete my whole life. Like this is just a carryover. This is what, being an athlete was almost a requirement. And nowadays it's like, I'm not saying there's not space for everybody, but the names I'll leave out, but there are some really uncoordinated, clumsy people that I've had the, displeasure of working with. And it's like, man, just know your ass from your elbow, man.
What did you play? What sports did you play growing up?
Growing up, I played football. That was my first love. I did martial arts, and
when did you start training martial arts?
Martial arts, I started at 8 years old. I started Taekwondo. Yeah. So say it again.
You competed?
Yeah, I did some tournaments and stuff, and then I had 4 amateur kickboxing fights. While I was still wrestling, and then I just was fortunate enough in November to do a pro boxing match. It was on the Floyd Mayweather undercard.
How nervous are you for that?
I was pretty damn nervous because I'm like, okay, they know, and this was like it was in Dubai, so you guys know, like, I mean,
how great was that?
Oh, it was awesome. They flew my wife over. They flew my coach
do everything
over.
First class.
They flew my agent over. Right. We had a week there. Like my wife and I, we rode on camels. We were in the desert in like dune buggies. I mean, we had a great trip.
They do everything classy, Bobby.
Yeah.
Everywhere. Yeah.
It was top notch.
Yeah.
Top notch. But it was just, when this kind of fell in my lap, and the person that egged me on it was another person within the business. And he said, yeah, they love your style. They love your this, that. And he was putting over how familiar they were with me. And I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, they know pro wrestling's a work, right?
Right.
Because like I have some amateur kickboxing fights, but I mean, you'd have to really go out of your way to find them. They can't be talking about that. So, but all was good, and everything worked out great. And
who did you fight? Experience. I know. Is it a name?
No. His name was Botang Prempe. He was a boxer from West Africa, and
so how much film study did you do on him? How much film study did you do on him?
A good amount. We had 5 fights of his to see. The videos weren't real good, but he was he is a guy he had a good amount of fights, but he's where in Africa exactly he's from, I don't know, but they are he's fighting to pay the bills. He's fighting to have I don't think I think third world sort of vibes,
he's fighting for a living. Right.
So let me before I ask you the next question, let me put over, and too bad we don't have Jamaican horns, because our stellar producer here, he's got this sound machine thing and it doesn't have Jamaican horns. Let me kick some Jamaican horns to you for looking so spiffy and wearing a tie. I don't think anybody's ever worn a tie for this. So you're either coming from a luncheon or going to a birthday, or you just got dressed up for us. Either the 3, kudos. Okay.
Honestly, you look like a doctor. Like if we're doing a podcast on COVID or something, you look like a doctor in the office. Like, that's like,
hey, listen,
right.
I've been called much worse, so I will take it happily.
Even that didn't come out good. Okay. Yeah. Did you hear that, Bobby? That was atrocious.
I didn't create the clip.
Right.
But you played it.
Let me ask you this, because it's funny. Like, you remember back in the day when Inoki was making all these guys fight Crow Cop? Okay, then like, because some of the guys had some shoot fighting experience, and stuff, but they were going in there getting killed, right?
Yeah,
bro. If they did like today, like you're a shoot. I'm going to refer to you as a shoot tough guy. You fight. You martial art. I call those shoot tough guys. How many shoot tough guys are in the locker room today compared to back like maybe like 10, 15 years ago?
Very few.
Very few.
Very few. Very few. I think you got a lot of.
Bro, you can tell by looking at them.
You got a lot of
some guys you never know have fighting experience because you never hear, because you don't know the background. Like who are some tough guys? Like guys that do you want? Here's a great question. They asked this the other day to what's his name? Gilbert Burns was interviewing the fighters at UFC, right?
Okay.
And he was interviewing them, and he was asking all the guys, if you're in a bar fight, okay, who are the 3 guys you want with you of professional wrestlers?
I mean, easily for me, I got 3 right off the top of my head.
And by the way, just so you know, Bobby,
this is a bar fight. This isn't true. This is a bar fight, not a
right.
rule.
So just so you know, because I know you're going to probably pick him, and he's an easy guy. You can't pick Marco Stunt. Okay. Go ahead.
All right, so we'll take 1 off the table.
That's tremendous.
More.
That's tremendous. Give us 3.
easy, hands down. If I can go from any time frame, for me, it's Haku, it's Brock Lesnar, and it's Kurt Angle.
Okay, so what about today?
Yeah,
what about today?
So I'm very partial to this one, just because I've rolled with him and I know his skill level. But Kyle O'Reilly for one.
All right, your boy.
Plus he's Irish. All right. Plus he's Irish.
I mean, he's my boy.
Right? Yeah, like that. You want an Irish fighter with you if you're in a bar fight, right?
I'd ask for Jamaican horns for him again, but I don't want to embarrass.
Yeah.
He's
so
we got Kyle O'Reilly. Kyle O'Reilly's got your back. You're in a bar. I'm thinking, for some reason, I'm thinking bar saloon like in the Old West, like we don't have bars now. But okay, so you've got him.
Doors. Yeah, the doors.
Yeah, right.
I like it. I like it. Kyle, for sure. I don't see how you could leave out Matt Riddle. Legitimate tough guy. Legitimate skill
and does not
set.
look like one.
Yeah.
Had no issue. Very confident too.
And he was
calling out Goldberg, guys. I'll beat the shit out of you. I thought that was interesting when he was doing that. I was entertained by Riddle, like going outside the box and saying he beat the shit out of Jericho.
Yeah,
kind of real. Go ahead.
Before UFC, Riddle actually taught himself MMA from a book. Who's the Hawaiian guy?
BJ Penn.
BJ Penn's book. He read his book and studied it and taught himself. That's how he got on The Ultimate Fighter.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's well known that amateur wrestlers or people with amateur wrestling background, like they're some of the toughest nuts to crack, right? And I know we actually are from the same similar area high schools. He was a bit younger than me. But he went to Saratoga Springs High School, so I know that he was a wrestler and that he had that background. So when he went into the UFC, that was like, because Riddle's time in the UFC was when the UFC was still, you had people that generally had one area of expertise and then they learned the others, right? Well, now a decade or two later, now you're seeing these guys that they start their training in MMA. Mm-hmm. And so you're seeing the difference, like all the boxes are checked and whatever you don't check, that's getting exposed. Therefore, you've got to have that base level set of everything before you can even talk about like the nuance of, well, who's better at this or better at that. It's amazing the way that sport's evolved.
So you're rolling in with Fish,
Kyle,
Fish, Kyle, Riddle, one more.
Riddle. If it's today, Kyle, Riddle. Man, he's passed away, but just one, because he's a legitimate tough guy, and two, because he literally was the guy that would give you the shirt off his back. But Jay Briscoe, Jamin Pugh. Give me those three in my foxhole, please.
All right. Mm-hmm. Nice. Wow. Let me ask you a question, because we used to pick on you. We've been doing this podcast for like 6 years now, and we used to watch the shows. We'd watch NXT. Right? We always enjoyed, like I always said, when the Undisputed Era was on the show, there's just like the level of professionalism that you guys brought in the work, interviews, everything. It's just like seemed very, very clean. You guys were all good characters, right? But me and Konnan used to pick on this all the time. Bro, who came up with that name? Undisputed Era.
I thought you were talking about my name.
No.
I figured you were going with Fish.
Who came up with the name Undisputed Era? Because, like, remember Konnan? We always talk about, like, we were not fans of the
Undisputed Era, the Brawling Brutes. Yeah. There's so many corny names that you're like, really, dude?
How did you come up with that? Whose idea was it? Adam Cole came up with it?
No. Everybody want to wager, I guess?
Triple H? Hunter? That was his idea?
That was an office.
And nobody goes,
yep.
Really?
It was an office move. And we had a lot of other options, but that was the one you could tell they kind of leaned towards. And I think, I don't know, will only speak for myself, but I as reluctant as I was with some of the names, I was like, I don't know. I've just been doing this long enough. It's kind of like theme music. Even if you're not crazy about it at first, like the performance carries it. And then it almost just, I was pretty confident that whatever they named us, we were going to be fine.
Yeah, because you guys.
Oh yeah, you were, but it's always cooler when you got a cool name. Like I'll give you an example.
Sure.
Two guys you probably know. You know, Jack. I drink more Monster drinks than anybody on earth while simultaneously smoking Evans. You know Jack Evans?
I do know Jack Evans. Okay, yes, I do.
So Jack Evans and Angelico. You know him?
Yeah, I know him. Yeah.
All right. So I had them as a tag team. They were great.
Sure.
Bro, they came up with this thing, and you can ask either one if you ever see them because they'll pop. And we had like this, like everybody in the company that was, like in creative and other departments coming up for names for wrestlers or factions. Listen to the name that they came up with. And I said, there's absolutely no way I'm going to let them go out with that fucking name. The Angry Kids. I was like, what the hell is that?
Angry Kids.
Yeah, the Angry Kids. Ask Jack or Angelico when you see it. They'll pop. Yeah.
Well, let me tell you something. That's not a bad idea. Because I can see vignettes.
Okay, defend that.
I can see vignettes where they're at home and the parents are yelling at them and they're disrespecting the parents and yelling at the parents. They kick them out of the house. They go to the
shut up, mom.
Yeah, but that's got an expiration date. Like you can't be 40 and be one of the Angry Kids.
Well, here's the problem that they were known for, as you know, Jack, incredible high flyer, who I don't think gets his due because he came up with a lot of crazy shit. Yeah, but it was all like in the indies.
Make sense.
Right. He was ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And, I can't say, even though this guy did a lot of fucking crazy moves too, he was just crazy. Shoot, Teddy Hart, his boy. That was another guy that did crazy shit. Yeah. But the tag team of Jack and Angelico was basically two good looking guys. Bro, in Mexico, you're blonde, blue eyed, you're over like a motherfucker. Yeah. All right. Both young, both good looking.
Yeah.
Jack, when he would put on the headband, that white one, remember that he kind of looked like Eminem, and the girls would call him Eminem.
Yeah, it was very. Yep, I can totally see that.
Okay, they were good looking guys. One was an incredible high flyer, and the other guy was a good high flyer, but great like mat wrestling. Yeah, with Angelico. Yeah. So Angry Kids doesn't fit them. You know what I'm saying?
No, agreed.
Let me ask you a question.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
So when you went from I don't think we've had a lot of people on the show that we could reference this to. Is like when you left because the AEW they don't let their wrestlers talk to us because we're I don't know. It's like for some reason I'm a bad guy. Like they can't even come on the show and be mean or something. I don't know. It's like
yes, sir.
But be rated in person by Tony, so that's even worse. But go ahead.
So what was it like when you went from the NXT universe, like the corporate structure there, went to AEW, right off the top of your head, major differences?
Quite a lot less structure, quite a bit more freedom, which at first I think a lot of the boys, you kind of welcome it, but then you experience it for a little while, and it gets a little frustrating to be totally honest. Like,
is there a part of it, Bobby? Let me interrupt because I'll forget. Please, is there a part of it that when you let guys fix their own matches, sometimes you have guys that have a lot of power and they're selfish and you can't do shit about it? But go ahead. I have that problem in Mexico. Yeah.
I think yes, for sure. That wasn't the thing that I experienced firsthand too many times. I think some people did have way too much stroke for sure, but I think some of those people, that's how they operate and that's how they get over. And those people are just going to be who they're going to be. I'm not one of them. I couldn't tell you the difference between a Democrat and a Republican. Like, I don't play that game. I always let my physical speak for itself because I've been doing athletics my whole life. So that's how I know to operate.
You know what's funny, Bobby? That guys that are really sure of themselves don't need to really politic. It's the guys that are unsure. Because I never saw Rey Mysterio, I never saw Benoit, I never saw Eddie Guerrero. I never saw those guys politic because they knew they were good hands. You know what I'm saying?
And all three that you just named are all exceptional athletes. Right. You know, and that's where it does go up my ass sideways that our business gets put in the place it does at times where it's like, okay, yeah, but you don't have to be the best athlete. Like, I mean, some of the people that have been successful that are, you know, just the most uncoordinated mother effers you ever want to like participate in anything with. And somehow, you know,
do you
carved it out.
Do you think that a lot of it is, and I see it more in AEW than I do in WWE, that they get so many guys that have bad habits from the indies and they translate in the ring, you know, whether it's not being athletically prepared, whether it's not having the maturity, whether it's just, you know, always slapping their thighs or shit like that really looks bad. You know what I'm saying? Do you think that's a part of it? That all the guys that they brought from the indie that carried over bad habits, or no?
I do. I think that there's a middle ground where there's like too much structure, there's not enough structure, and there's a sweet spot in the middle. And I don't think that AEW. I think they're closer to the like maybe too much freedom. And you can't, you know, the boys sometimes need to be saved from the boys.
Yeah,
right. They're their own worst enemy.
Right, exactly. Bro, I had a wrestler, and I've said the name before. So we had L.A. Park. He was the original guy that was in WCW. Okay. So when he left the company, that's not his IP. So they took it from him and they gave it to another guy, right? And this guy just called himself L.A. Park instead of La Parca, which is the original name, right? So I had come up with the idea where they would both fight each other over the name. And L.A. Park, he kept beating this guy after the match over and over and over till finally it came a point where I said, bro, you've got to win. He goes, no, it's okay. He can keep winning because he was afraid of him. Because this guy would just beat him up in the ring, outside of the ring, you know, very unprofessional guy. And so I had to tell him, okay, it stops now. Because if this guy keeps beating you, he's a heel and you're a baby face, bro, people are already starting to boo you. So I had to save him from himself, you know? And the thing is that a lot of times guys, instead of being grateful, they're giving us a chance to do what we want. No, they take advantage of it.
Yeah. And that's where I think it is the idea of saving the boys from themselves is that
100%.
The inmates can't run the asylum. The inmates cannot run the asylum. There has to be a governor put on, and the creativity's great. But like I said, there has to be a governor for it, something that like funnels it into something constructive as opposed to, you know, I mean, how many times are people just trying to get their shit in or suspicious of like, oh, well, this guy's just trying to get his shit in. Like that creates dissension. That doesn't create unity in the locker room. And, you know, that's where I think a company can be successful is when it feels like, okay, well, you know, we're going out there to put on the best goddamn show we can put on. And that I'll say this. I mean, that's what NXT Black and Gold felt like, the takeovers. It felt like it was 7 to 8 matches and everybody was getting, you know, a decent amount of time and the stories the fans were invested in. So we're all going to go out there and just try to have a great show.
Right. And you could tell, bro, we loved those shows and we put it over. When you were there, NXT was incredible. Then were you there when Bruce and Vince took over?
No, I think I was released right before that.
Okay. Because, bro, whatever they were doing, and I have a lot of respect for both those guys because they've done a lot of good shit, but they've also done, bro, that show sucked. And they even we even have a friend that works there, and we were like, bro, what's going on in the show? And he didn't even know, right? And they brought like really green people in. The story sucked. But now, I don't know if you've seen NXT recently, bro, they really got They've got some good people there now.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. My 10-year-old, my wife and I, we have a 10-year-old daughter, and she watches all of them. NXT, Raw, SmackDown, AEW. She doesn't care what it is. She'll watch it.
Right.
And I love that. That's a fan. That's the stuff that, each of us were at one time and why we are still involved now.
Are you a sports fan?
What were you going to say, Disco?
Like you a sports fan still?
So growing up, I was a huge football fan. And
who's your team?
When I was a big Florida State Seminoles fan. I loved college football.
Oh my God, we have heat right off the bat. Let me tell you,
Miami guys.
I'm a Miami fan. It's all good. It's all good.
Listen,
I'm not going to
Derek Brooks. Derek Brooks.
He was
the
a
greatest
beast,
linebacker that ever lived. So it's hard to not.
We could say Ray Lewis too, but go ahead.
Well, Ray Lewis. Yeah, I'll tell you what. Yeah, Ray Lewis is hell yeah. Yeah, I can't argue with that, man. Ray is. That's a couple. That's a hell of a pair.
Yeah, that's a handful right there. Right.
Yeah.
So you liked FSU? Who else?
FSU, and then I was a Kansas City Chiefs fan when they weren't winning Super Bowls.
Right.
Wow.
When I got out of college,
pretty random.
Yeah, they weren't winning Super Bowls when I was.
Well, why would you like Kansas City if you lived in like the Panhandle? Is that where you're from? Like the Panhandle?
No, I'm from
Florida?
upstate New York.
Oh, you're from Albany. My bad.
My dad was a Giants fan. My brother was a Dolphins fan. How I ended up a Chiefs fan. Derek Thomas was another linebacker. I played linebacker, so
seven sacks in one game. Remember that?
Yes, yes, I do. Was that against the Bills?
May have been. Yeah,
I don't remember, but 7 sacks.
Nice. Let me ask you a question. We can get back to wrestling.
Yes, sir.
Because I want to get your take on these. Because I bitch about this all the time, and not a lot of people bitch about this, but I've been for a while now. These are my 3 biggest pet peeves in professional wrestling with the work these days. I want your opinion whether you think it's an issue or do you see it the same way I do. Number one, the thigh slap. Okay.
Yep.
Back when just a couple guys did it, it's like you don't really notice it. Okay, to do it. But now with everybody doing it, when you're watching 9 hours of television every week, and just everybody is just slapping their thigh, it just makes it look, collectively, it makes the product look completely different.
Amateurish.
Amateurish. Mm-hmm. Number 2, the fact that so many matches, everybody does the spot where 10 minutes in the match, you stop and let the guy forearm you in the face back and forth.
Yeah.
And that's done like every match, So it's not even like psychology.
And this is what's happened, Bobby. The forearm has become the crutch for people that don't know how to punch. I was watching NXT this week, and you know that girl Roxanne?
Yeah.
Okay. Roxy.
Short girl, right?
Yeah, right.
Hair.
Yeah, right. So she was having an issue with some girl backstage, right? And instead of punching her, she forearmed her. And I was like, Jesus Christ.
Right. And then the other one is the fact that everybody stands there and they can't. I don't know why they can't time this out or why there's not a lot of trust. But when you're doing the dives with the guys on the floor, just so many of them just stand there and look and wait for the guy to hit. Instead of you spin around, you see we used to do dives this is 20 something years ago. If whoever was going to do a dive on me, I would say when I put my hand, I got my back to you, when I put my hand on the apron, take off. So I'm going to turn around right when you jump so it doesn't look like I saw you coming,
Yeah.
Those are my 3 biggest pet peeves. And I think when fans watch that collectively over the course of television, I think it hurts the product. What's your take on that?
Do you have any issue with any of those 3 things?
I have an issue with all 3 of them. And I think you're very spot on. I know that I've probably been a part of some of those dive catches where it is because so much is talked about in the back now. You're just waiting for the next thing.
Yeah, you're just kind of going with the flow.
Yeah, so there's no presence anymore. There's no ability to be in the moment unless you're one of the very good guys that have been doing this a while that can go out there and just let it fly. I think that what the bigger issue that's a byproduct of is just once the business was exposed, the people doing it now, no one's trying to cover up the cooperation.
There's no what's the word I want to use? There's no respect to the suspension of disbelief.
100%.
And then when the wrestlers don't have the respect for the suspension of disbelief, the shit looks like it. Everybody's slapping their thighs, or it looks fake. Yep. Too fake. And just and I say just like this, if they clean just a couple of those things up, the product would look more realistic. But
it's almost like Bobby. It's almost like a magician letting you watch how he puts the pigeons in the hat. Before he does it, it's like, okay, dude, I don't want to see in a movie that it's really a green screen. The guy's not really flying. Why are you showing me this shit?
Right.
There's no respect, very unprofessional to me.
But then here's the funny thing.
I would like to say one more thing. I think wrestling would be more enjoyable if when the guy does the dive from the top and it takes 10 guys to break a fall of one guy, okay?
Yeah.
That when they all fell down, you'd hear the bowling pin sound when they're falling. That would make that more enjoyable for me.
Yeah, I support that. I support that.
What did you like growing up? When you were a fan growing up, who was your when you were a fan of the business, and then when you got in the business? And when you first started training, who were you a fan of before you got in? And then when I started training, I was a fan of Piper, Macho, Dusty, Flair, Honky Tonk Man and stuff, and the characters. And then, but when I got in the business, you start training. Then we had the Japanese grocery store that was a half hour away. I'd drive there. I'd get the Japanese tapes because now you're in the business and you're in. Oh, what's all this other stuff? So I was watching all Japan and New Japan and stuff back then, but. What was your path?
So if I go all the way back to being a kid, my Dynamite Kid was immediately my one of my favorites because I had an older brother, and my older brother was a little bit taller than me. So I identified with Dynamite, who, was shorter, looked like a little gymnast because he was on all the roids in the store. And my brother was
like a bigger version of Pac.
Yeah. But I mean, he was captivating to me. Ricky Steamboat, because I was into martial arts. The one that really took my fandom to a different level was Sting, and later it would become the Great Muta. So it was the feud with Sting that introduced me to Muta, and that blew it out of the water. That Muta was a superhero come to life to me.
Right. He was. You go back and watch. It's just a very, very unique skill set.
So unique.
Right. Yeah. Nobody was doing what he was doing. Right. And it showed that you don't need to speak English because Gary Hart was great.
Yes, and Gary Hart was, for me, because I grew up, we would get world class, so I was familiar with the Great Kabuki, and that Gary Hart was his mouthpieces. So, all of those variables, they just fit together, and it made Muta, and the fact that I didn't have easy access to Muta, it made him just the right combination of athletic, exotic, hard to find the material on him too, so exclusive in a way. And it was just, it was perfect. He was everything that was wrestling to me, everything that was good about pro wrestling.
Yeah. I love that era too. But let me, before Disco gets in this next question. So it says here that, and I don't remember this, Bobby, so maybe there's nothing to it or there is something to it. It says, has a controversial singles match with Punk where he kicks out of the go to sleep before 3. What happened there?
We had a match on Dynamite, and it was early. And they were definitely
How long have you been there?
I'd only been there
only 2 months.
Yeah, a couple months. I think it was the week after it was me and Danielson, which was easily one of my favorite matches.
He's the man.
Yeah. And it had been a 10-year span from the last time he and I got to wrestle. And we did have similar martial arts styles. So I really always enjoyed mixing it up with Brian. So even a decade later to get that chance, that was awesome. working Punk, it was like everybody knows. Everybody saw the UFC fights. Like,
right.
You're not
the guy calls spade a spade. The guy was the worst UFC fighter in their history. I mean, like, you can't sugarcoat that. It is what it is.
Sure.
Right. So,
and it's okay.
The only guy, Bobby, that I would, I give him credit because he had the balls to try it. Most guys won't even try it. But I'm going to give the number one spot. And I don't know if you remember this. This is going way back, Bobby. Remember that big, like 600-pound black guy that got knocked out by the.
Yeah. That was UFC 1.
Yarborough.
Right.
Yeah.
When the weight class,
Yarborough.
small guys versus the big guys.
That would be my number one.
He became an actor.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
So known as being problematic, right? In ROH and fucking.
I've always known and heard that about him, but because my interactions with him were always minimal, I didn't pay much mind to it. When he comes back to wrestling after all these years, after what he managed to embarrass two industries at the same time, with the UFC thing. Like, I mean, let's be honest. I had to
Jamaican horns, Feeney.
I had to explain to my wife, who, at the time was my girlfriend, but she asked me while we watched the fight, why does he keep like pirouetting, like spinning in a circle? And now this might be a little bit nuanced and the average fan probably won't understand this, but
a lot of the boys listen to this, so they will.
Yeah. Well, what he was doing was when you miss a round kick, especially if it's your back leg, the momentum takes you all the way around in a circle. But it's the momentum. The circle, the spin is a byproduct of throwing it correctly. He does not throw them correctly. Therefore, when he would throw it, he was turning himself in a circle.
As if it was the momentum.
Yes, as opposed to the momentum doing it. So my wife was picking up on it accurately, going, why is he making a circle? And the only reason I could perceive it the way it was because I know what the hell it's supposed to be.
Right.
And like that, to me, that's disrespectful to martial arts. Like, you need to have some self-awareness and know that, like, hey, I'm going to go out there. I'm going to embarrass the people that trained me. I'm going to embarrass myself. And this isn't my bag. Like, regardless, the thing becomes, so 8 years later, you come back to pro wrestling. And I don't think Punk's a bad pro wrestler. I really don't. I think from a pro wrestling foundational standpoint, back in Ring of Honor, I saw him in those days when he, wore basketball shorts and boots and wasn't wearing kick pads and trying to steal Kenta or Bryan Danielson's gimmick. He was good. He was just a good, solid, pro wrestler.
Good detail guy too.
Yeah. But you go on pay-per-view and you embarrass both industries, and then you come back to pro wrestling, and like, now not only are you insulting the fans' intelligence by putting your martial arts out there on display, but you're insulting guys like me, guys like Kyle O'Reilly, guys like Bryan Danielson, by asking us to put over your bunk ass martial arts because the stuff doesn't look good. And this is what I tell young guys now. Like, once you get that foundation, and I think you guys could relate to this, once you have that foundation of pro wrestling basics, the magic is to start adding what makes you. So for me, that was martial arts, and it's been a process to get that in there in a way that looks good. If that's not your lane, like, leave it for the guys like I just mentioned, the Bryan Danielsons, the Kyle O'Reillys. I will put myself in that category as well. Samoa Joe. Like, I don't want to see Samoa Joe and Punk wrestle against each other where they're both doing similar styles, because Joe does it so much better. Just be self-aware, man.
So my question off the original question, was there some sort of problem between you and him or it's not true that you kicked out or what
I did kick out before. Right. So before the match, there was no problem. I didn't. And during the match, there was no problem. Like I knew his martial arts were what they were, and I didn't expect him to be any different. In the match, there was a point, we knew that the finish was the go to sleep. He gave me the Iggy on the cover. And like I've gotten and given the Iggy before, at times at the end of the match, just to you're just brothering, right? You're brothering. Hey, good one.
Right.
This one felt different. I don't know if it was the way he squeezed or the amount of times he squeezed. It seemed like he was trying to get my attention, and I had a split second to decide, like, well, I'm going to let that window close and just stay down for the pin, or I'm going to kick out. And maybe he just wants to pick me up and hit me with it again because the match went well or whatever. I don't know. It was literally a split second decision. I had to either shit or get off the pot, and, kind of kick out is what I did. And to this day, like, I'll own it and I'll defend it.
What did he do? He picked you up and gave you another one? What happened after
didn't. That? The referee, Paul Turner, kind of counted 3, and then he awarded it. And then people, of course, because, pro wrestling fans and with the dirt sheets and everything, now they are so turned on by seeing something they don't think they were supposed to see, as opposed to like, hey, follow the goddamn storylines. That's actually what you're paying your ticket for. They want to know. And so that thing caught fire in a way that it really, there wasn't that much to it.
So let me ask you a backup question. When you got to the back, were you admonished or talked to by Tony, by your agent, by Punk, by anybody, or nobody gave a fuck?
It was one of the strangest experiences of my career. I go to the back. And obviously I'm aware of what happened and whatever, but I thought we had a good match prior to that.
It was very good.
Phil is a marginal athlete at best and a god-awful martial artist. So I thought, like, wow, we actually didn't have a bad one, all things considered. I got to the back, and when I walked into Gorilla, Phil was in Tony's ear, and they were a distance from me. And so I'm already starting to see the political Phil Brooks.
Did it go through your mind Did it go through your mind at that time? He's probably burying me.
Yes, of course it did.
Okay.
Because they looked at me, and whatever. I immediately went over and like approached it, and they went up separate ways. Phil was then in his locker room. Phil, had his own locker room in AEW, which to me, listen, people's opinions vary on this.
I've never been impressed with that, to be honest. Like,
well,
I remember,
Samoa Joe didn't have his own locker room. Brian Danielson didn't have his own locker room.
WCW, Hogan and Macho and like Piper had their own locker rooms, but like Hall and Nash and stuff, they were all in the locker room.
Hogan, Macho, and Piper, bro. That's a whole different. I do not take issue with that. You know what I'm saying?
But I'm just saying, it's like the thing that I took issue with them doing that is Hogan would always talk about, hey, the team and stuff. And I'm like, like what teams? Like, you get your own. It's like, they're like, don't use words like that. You know what I'm saying? If you like one special treatment and talk about the team, it's like it's kind of like you and the team. That's the way. Go ahead.
Yeah, but in all fairness, Bobby, when I was in let me just say this: when I was in WWE, and I'm talking about a long time ago, like 89, 90. Hogan had his own locker room, Mach had his own locker room, and Ultimate Warrior had his own locker room. And so it's nothing new to AEW.
No, and I really didn't. I didn't really care. That didn't bother me. It just always stuck out to me that Samoa Joe and Bryan Danielson, who could have definitely requested or demanded their own locker room, in my opinion, never did. So to me, that spoke volumes about them. I don't really care what it said about Phil. I don't. Just is what it is. But for me, it was like, oh yeah, he's one of the boys, and it will always be. Brian, one of the boys. Like I'll take either of those guys in my foxhole.
Yeah, and now, great people too.
Great people.
Did you and Punk eventually talk about it or have a confrontation, or was it just? It seems like it just was behind your back stuff.
I went into his locker room because that's where we called the match. So my bag was in there. Because again, I was being.
Plus you always thank the guy after the match.
Yes. So, yeah. And before all this, I was being very respectful to like, okay, yeah, you're CM Punk. You don't impress me, but I'm not going to be the turd in the punch bowl here. Like, I don't really, whatever. Let's go out and have a good one. So I went back to get my stuff, and he and I talked back there. And to be honest, he was. How colorful can language be on this?
As colorful as you want.
Okay, yeah. I said it on. I did an interview with Steve Fall from NBC, and it was right around this time. And I can't think of another word that describes it, but like Phil acted like a cunt. Like he was very passive aggressive about like, yeah, oh yeah, it's fine. It was no problem. But it was like, dude, we're men. Like I'm somebody's father. You can speak openly and honestly to me. Like you don't need to go grab the booker and get in his ear and bury me or put me over. I don't need your favor, but I definitely don't need you undercutting me either. Just say it to my face, dude. And that I saw the way that he operated through that whole thing, and it definitely rubbed me the wrong way. I didn't have an axe to grind with him after that. It just became like, okay, I see you. I know who you are.
Right.
And so I treated him that way from that point out. There was one time where things got heated with Kyle and I and the FTR boys. And Dax and Cash, we've always gotten along with them very well. So when I say heated, it got professionally heated.
Right.
And it was something that happened on TV. It spilled over a little bit to the locker room. And in the midst of that, I definitely was a bit emotional about some things. And when somebody was talking to me, I think it was the Bucks, Phil came up to me and Phil, I think what he doesn't understand is that like the Undertaker is the locker room leader because the boys gave him that position. You don't give
you can't anoint yourself.
Right. And that's what he did and was attempting to do in that moment. I don't know what happened, guys.
It's all right.
Okay.
As long as we can hear you, we're okay.
Yeah. He said something about like, keep it down and whatever his comment was. And I just, the look that I gave him, I didn't see it. So I don't know what it said. But I then said to him, I don't know who you think you are, but please get the fuck out of my face.
Right.
And, for me at that point, just as being a man, like enough of the pro wrestling bullshit. Because listen, at the end of the day, this is fiction.
Right.
Phil, I will fold you like a fucking wet nap. I don't I'm somebody's father too, so I don't need to be fighting anybody. But like, you're not my locker room leader. Mind your business. Like, beat it, geek. and that's just who.
Did you feel, Bobby? I'm sorry for cutting you up. Did you feel like besides anointing himself the locker room leader, which, as you say, for the people that aren't in the business, the locker room picks the leader. You don't fucking pick yourself. Okay. Right. But besides that, did you feel like maybe it sounds like that he was a little bit nosy and was trying to get in everybody's business, or no?
I don't trust much that comes from him because his history is what it is. Like, we're going all the way back to Ring of Honor days when I didn't know him. I would hear things about his political, string pulling, and I've heard it all since. And then the way my father raised me was like, you don't believe the bullshit. It's how people treat you. And I gave him an opportunity to treat me better than the way that I had heard he operates. And he had the opportunity, and with that, he did what he always does. So I'm left to have no opinion of you other than like, yeah, you're kind of a slimy dude. Not to mention that. Go ahead.
So you're not surprised at how that turned out with him in AEW?
For me, it's the heat that I ended up getting with Tony. I believe a lot of it stemmed from the stuff with Phil, and I was not quiet about his bad martial arts because I feel like I'm qualified. Not even feel. I know I'm qualified to have an opinion on it. And after he behaved the way that he did with me, I was like, okay, well, I won't be quiet about it. And then here he is on Dynamite on national TV in what is like the biggest match of the company at that time. It was against Moxley, I believe. And here he's got these spots in the match where he is asking Moxley to sell like knocked out from a head kick. Like, Phil, do you know what your head kicks look like? Like my 10-year-old daughter's not knocked out from your head kick. Like, just don't insult. You're insulting the fans and you're insulting your coworker, John Moxley,
because he's got to sell lame shit. Yeah.
There you go. Right. And have some self-awareness. Know what of your stuff looks lame and what doesn't. I've had to do it too. I grew up a huge Chris Adams fan. And because I did Taekwondo, the super kick is nothing more than a step behind sidekick, which I always threw well. But when it came to pro wrestling, my super kick was not super. It was very mediocre.
So you didn't throw it.
Is it a super kick in MMA called a skip side kick?
For me, it was a step behind sidekick in that was Taekwondo. That was the first thing that I trained in. And the super kick, obviously, like we pro wrestling it up a bit. I mean, the step behind sidekick is generally thrown to the body, not really a face.
Bobby,
right? But
you know what's interesting is that I actually when I was I trained, I would go to the school here in Vegas, and I was a trainer for a while. But I would do one class a week, and I would just do just striking and selling. Because I was saying, look, if you're going to come out of my system, you're going to look like you know how to fight. You're going to look like you know how to throw a punch in a wrestling match. That's basically what I was teaching everybody. But I actually did a pretty good job of teaching MMA guys. Like I had
how to transition.
Stephan Bonner.
Yeah.
Because I was like, okay, you just find some basic martial arts moves that you can do, and just teach them how to pull the spin kick, punches. And then Bonner was actually really good at this. He would do the thing where you get the guy behind the I can't believe I can't. When you have the guy behind the neck. No. When you have the guy, you have him in the clinch. Okay.
Clinch. Yeah. The plum.
He was.
Yep.
I actually had trained him, and they looked really good of like throwing knees to the head when you have the guy in the clinch, and he was like hitting the guy. So and they would go out there and they look like a martial artist that knows how to professional wrestle. You know what I'm saying? And I think what happens is when you don't have guys that they never did martial arts, and now they're doing martial arts, but in a fake fashion. I think you're absolutely right about that. It does expose. Like it makes it, I always said I never liked fake MMA in wrestling because I just go watch MMA.
Right,
why would
100%.
Right, and plus the wrestlers don't know how to sell it good enough. These days. I mean, bro, like I said, the super kick all of a sudden is like you kick somebody in the chin.
Right,
they should at least get knocked down.
Right.
Right.
It shouldn't be staggering.
It's right. They stagger.
They're staggering for the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. Like the Canadian Destroyer, bro. When that first came out, it looked like a fucking devastating move, and it could still be a devastating move, but nobody sells it as such.
Right.
It's what we tell them it does. It's we're the puppet masters, and it's what we tell them.
Now we've worked ourselves. So I got another question. So when you, because you said that based off of that match with Punk, you had problems with Tony. So whatever. What were those problems, if you can talk about them? And did that lead to you eventually leaving the company?
I don't know I don't know what actually resulted in me leaving the company. I know that when I signed with them, it was a 3-year deal, but the numbers weren't right.
Right.
So I agreed to a 1-year deal. And to be honest, at that time, so not only was I released from WWE, but my older brother passed away from a drug overdose within the same month. Like,
sorry to hear that.
I didn't know where I was working. My wife and I were engaged at that point, going to get married, and like, just having some security in a job was like okay, yes, I want that. So I signed a 1-year deal. And my feeling was, by the end of that year, I'll prove that I'm worth more than what you were offering, and then we'll go from there. And when we got to the end of that year, like, first off, I'm going to say I'm grateful that Tony was willing to give me any of his money. Like, talk about first world problems. Like, oh my God, you need to give me more of your money. No, you're willing to give me any of your money. Holy shit, I'm grateful. But when we got to the end of that year, I felt like, I know my value, and we weren't agreeing on the numbers. And so I walked, and it comes down to nothing more than that. Like,
so now that you were telling me this, I'm wondering, you said you were released by WWE, or did I hear you wrong?
I was released by WWE in August of whatever the year was prior to me going to AEW.
That's weird, because you were doing so good there. Was there an issue or something, or I don't know?
I think it was the pandemic. So what I believe really kind of killed the Undisputed Era was the direction we were going after the 4th War Games with Pat McAfee was to continue.
Oh, wasn't he going to turn you babyface or something like that?
Yeah, and I think it was to go with Pat, not with Pat, but against Pat, and that would make us whatever.
Right.
Things went south on the deal with Pat, or looked like they were going to, so they changed the plan for us. And I think just for lack of something else to do with us, they just finally said, okay, well, we've thought about it for, a few times now. Let's just split them up. So they did. And when they did, I think immediately, everybody kind of regretted it, because it was one of those things that the fans just didn't want,
Right. Right.
And,
plus, you guys were so valuable. But let me ask you this, Bobby. Where is your boy? I haven't heard from him in a long time. Kyle O'Reilly.
Kyle had neck surgery. And he's still under contract with AEW, and, love AEW or hate him, love Tony Khan or hate him. I can say nothing but positive things about the fact that, like, Kyle's been on the payroll the whole time. I mean, he's
even when Santana, when he broke his leg, he kept paying him for a year.
Yeah. Tony Khan
will take care of you.
My issues with Tony were never personal either. Like, I don't know the man well enough personally to have an issue with him. And like I said, I'm grateful for the money, but like, for what he's done for Kyle alone, and Kyle being one of my closest friends, Kyle's got a wife and a daughter, and like, that alone I'll respect and have. Yeah,
that talks loads about him. Yeah,
it does 100%. Yeah,
because he could have waved his hand and released him.
Sure could. There's a few different heartless ways that he could have gone about that, and I think both you guys have seen that side of pro wrestling. Get a little ugly sometimes.
Right. So what are you doing now? Are you doing indies? You're doing your podcast, which you just started, right?
We've been doing it now over a year. We did
that's good.
A year, maybe 2-3 months ago, I think, was our year anniversary. Yeah.
And do you usually just talk about wrestling? Do you have guests?
We do both. We do a little bit of everything. We kind of figured it out in that way, where it was wrestling first. Then we started doing guests, and then we would throw in an episode here and there where it was just the three of us shooting the shit, more or less about wrestling. But then we've had some other guests on. Rampage Jackson we had on, Kenny Florian, some other people within like the MMA world. So it's mostly pro wrestling, martial arts, MMA. My coach, my Muay Thai coach was just on recently. He just won like an independent level MMA title. So we had him on. We've had some people that are different industries as well, totally outside of either.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, we mix it up a little bit, but we're definitely, at our base, we're a pro wrestling. We talk pro wrestling. Yeah.
So wrestling wise, what are you doing? Are you doing indies? You going to Japan?
Indies.
You going to Europe? What do you? Okay.
Doing indies, going to Japan. I would love to work that out at some point. I've done a couple trips to Mexico. I've done a couple over the UK.
You wrestled in one of the Triple Manias, remember?
I did, yes. There was that one. I just did a show in Tijuana.
For Crash?
November, yes, for Crash. I want to say, was it something like that? But yeah, so I'm still doing the indie stuff. I mean, I'd love to do another fight. To be honest, I whether it be
boxing or MMA.
I would prefer kickboxing or MMA. And the company that I did the boxing match for, we had 2 fights signed. And the second one, there was supposed to be, depending on the opponent, the option to do kickboxing or MMA. But things didn't come together quite the way they were hoping. They are doing another event, but a smaller event in the UK, I think, in October. And then the one after that is supposed to be bigger scale again. And we'll see if it comes back around. I would love to get another fight.
Let us know what you when you're going to fight again, so we can promote it on our show. And Joe can give you some tips for getting ads and and for the podcast game.
That. Yeah, I would love that. And gentlemen, if you because you guys are a couple of the OGs with this thing.
Yeah.
If you ever would have time to listen to an episode or something, your feedback would be just invaluable to me and my guys.
Yeah. Well,
how long's your episodes usually?
We do anywhere from an hour. If the guest is good and it's going well, we don't cut it short. We'll do 90 minutes.
Right.
But that's rare.
I'll put it in when I go. I'll put it in when I go work out this weekend.
Oh, cool! Thank you, sir. I'm flattered.
So, Bobby, where can people find you? What are your socials?
The Bobby Fish on Instagram. Same thing on Twitter. The Undisputed Podcast with Bobby Fish. It's on all your podcast platforms. We just came off of a streaming network. We just decided to opt out, but we're on YouTube as well for the podcast, the video version of that. BobbyFishApparel.com is the store.
What's on there? T-shirts or anything else?
Yep. T-shirts, 8x10s. I want to say some action figures are up there. But I know that September 27th, Streamly is going to be doing a virtual signing from my Instagram handle. But Streamly will be handling, they have the store. So if you go to streamly.com/BobbyFish, there's action figures, there's T-shirts, there's 8x10s. And then I will do the virtual signing of these things, and then Streamly will ship them anywhere across the world.
Yeah, bro, it's incredible now. That wasn't available in our era. All the different ways you have of making money besides, there's the podcasting game. There's a virtual signing. I'd never done a virtual signing, bro. I made a lot of money in a short time.
They're so easy. They're so easy.
They really are.
There's so many things going on where you can make money. That's ridiculous. Thank God. But bro, had we ever talked before, Bobby? Besides before Triple Mania?
I don't think so. Before Triple Mania, I don't think
Court
so.
Bauer was always putting you guys over when he was in ROH.
Who's that?
Court Bauer.
Oh yeah. Court's a great guy. Guy. I've always appreciated Court.
Yeah, he was always putting you guys over. Well, anyways, I just want to say, please send us any fights that you have in the future, anything you want promoted. We got a pretty good fan base here, and we'll disseminate it as such. I want to thank you, and this is a very white word, but I ain't afraid to use a white word from every now and then. I want to thank you for being so Natalie attired. Boom. And
these are what we call the good school clothes, Konnan. I got the good school clothes.
You just took school pictures with the apple, and the little book by you.
Yes,
so I want to thank you, Bobby. We'll have you back in the future again. And I want to thank you once again for being on, keeping it 100. Boom.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bobby. Thanks for your time, man.
Yeah,
and
guys. Thank you.
Joe will help you with anything you need.
Okay.
Yep. All right. Just shoot me a text or I'll hit you up tomorrow.
I will, Joe. I will. Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate you, guys.
My friend.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
All right.
All right.
Good night.
Good night. Cool guy, right?
Yeah, it was good.